Alright everyone, it's time to talk about the apparently unauthorized comments made by one Trump team member in regards to Trump's visit to the Western Wall. You see, Trump wanted to visit it and do the whole Israel-Palestine thing. One of the more major hallmarks, both during the campaign when he said this, all of his political opponents were like, oh, you can never accomplish this. And even now, with, I believe, as well, Kushner standing in there, because Kushner happens to be his Jewish son-in-law. Trump is trying to get some sort of deal hammered out between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and has apparently had at least some slight success already in doing so. A boss came out not long ago and said, oh yeah, you know, we want peace, we'll sign a peace deal. And it's like, people were like, what? What's going on here? I thought that the Israeli line was always the Palestinians will never want peace. The Palestinian line is always the Israelis will never want peace. And now it looks like at least the groundwork for some sort of negotiation has happened. Whether it takes the form of a long-term peace plan, that remains to be seen. But if Trump manages to do such a thing, and this may be why he suffers so much stiff resistance from the U.S. media and from the Ziocon sort of, the John McCain's of his own party. If he does manage to do so, it'll skyrocket his popularity. That alone would outweigh any of the other crap that people think that he's doing that's dishonest or it's Orange Hitler stuff. But what happened is apparently one of his team members, one of the people part of his entourage, was asked by the Israelis, oh, well, Netanyahu would like to go with you. And this person was somewhat being a little bit angered, said, well, the Western Wall's not part of Israel, it's part of Palestine, so you need to know he can't come along. And they were taken aback, and they had a big problem with it. Now, this was also remarked upon by Trump's inner circle, that it was not Trump himself who said this, and it doesn't represent his opinion. But I wouldn't put it past him to have some staffer say such a thing, get him riled up so that he can then step and say, oh, I'm sorry that they said that. That's not the way I feel, and, we fired this fucker. And it gives him a golden parachute firing or something. And then it would all be part of his sort of plan to get people to the table. Make it look like somebody else is like anti-Semitic or a hardliner or something. Gets them to say something off the wall. And then Trump, by comparison, it's just like having a wingman or something like that. He steps in to be the good guy and say, no, I didn't mean that. And then he says, okay, Ben, we're going to go meet with the boss too. You guys need to shake hands. We need to have a peace deal. It's good for me. It's certainly good for my popularity. It'd be really, really good for all the foreign aid we have to fucking pump into this region. We're getting fucking tired of it. And so we're going to hammer something out here. And you're going to sit down with my son-in-law and you're going to hammer it out. I wouldn't put it past Trump to design such a simplistic plan. It's just like with this Washington Post crap. Yeah, he probably had one of his staff leak this fake news to the Washington Post just to get egg on their face, just to reignite the argument. I saw last night, on that token, aside from the Israeli stuff, somebody was trying to claim on 4chan, oh, Sticks thinks Trump wants to get impeached. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that I think that he wants to get an actual investigation, not this fake, phony-ass, so-called investigation we've got right now, but a real honest-to-goodness congressional investigation into the Russian shit. I think he wants to get that going so he can prove that he's not connected with Russia, because then he can smear all of his political adversaries. That includes a lot of Republicans, too. What better way to do that than have some small meeting, some small closed-door meeting, have somebody call out to the WAPO, which is obviously going to report on it, hey, Trump gave classified intel to the Russians. Meanwhile, everything's on tape, it never happened, and it makes them look like total stooges, like it's just a hatchet job. I wouldn't put it past him to dream up such an idea. There's no loss for him. If he were actually connected to the Russians, and he were actually going to do that, he's smart enough to know not to have anyone who could even possibly be disloyal in the room. He would know better than to allow practically anybody in the room, unless the White House has been bugged, in which case his former claim about being spied on is true. Either way, he wins. Now, having some Trump entourage member hardline the Israelis, takes a call. Oh, we want Ben Netanyahu to go with you. No, he can't go with us. The Western Wall's Palestinian land. You fucking stay away from it. Doesn't that also sound slightly conspicuous? The claim that Trump is anti-Semitic, or something like that, or hates Israel, hates Jewish people, hates fucking minorities because he's a bigot. That's, yeah, that doesn't sound true to me, considering his son-in-law's Jewish. He has no problem with that fact. He's, like, got all this weird Jewish iconography in Trump Tower and so forth. I don't think that he's a gung-ho for Israel sort of person. You know, he's hanging out with Steve Bannon and some of these others. But I don't think he's anti-Semitic, so it wouldn't make any sense for Trump to actually believe such things. You know, the WAPO and these groups, the New York Times will say, oh, if Trump has a team member that says something bad, something that's not, you know, Zionism friendly, it's obvious that he's the next Adolf Hitler. He wants to gas these people or something, which is probably not true. He's the only one in recent memory who's actually made an honest effort. Very, very early on, I mean, we're talking first year of his presidency, he's already making an effort to get negotiations going after several presidents basically gave up. Obama more or less gave up. He never really did anything on it. The most significant thing that Obama did with regards to the Israel-Palestine stuff is say to Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israelis need to calm down with the warmongering towards the Gaza Strip. And that, of course, got them all flustered. That was one of the few things Obama said that made sense, because it signaled a slight shift in our policy away from being 100% pro-Israel, yes, they can abuse anyone they want and we will stand by them, to they need to take some degree of personal responsibility for their actions, and these settlements are at the very least unhelpful. I would say, obviously, totally morally wrong, obviously an imperialistic land grab, that's the language I would have used. But I can understand why Obama just said unhelpful. And I can understand Trump has basically echoed the same line. And yet he is, technically speaking, the best friend Israel ever has. Look, if the United States continues to shield Israel from all repercussions as a sort of weird Middle Eastern vassal state, eventually somebody will attack them. Because eventually somebody is going to get pushed too far and have no, or feel they have, no other choice. Almost to the point where we have to shield our own attack dog from its own inherent aggressive tendencies, its own paranoid tendencies. Be a little bit like China reining in the North Koreans. I've made that comparison a number of times. They're both rogue nuclear states that haven't signed the NPT. Israel still doesn't technically openly admit it has nuclear weapons, but it does. Declassified Pentagon reports from the mid-'80s said they had multi-stage nuclear weapons at that time. That put them ahead. I think it puts them ahead of India and Pakistan as far as nuclear prowess. Puts them on par with China. Puts them almost on par with the UK when it comes to nuclear technology. They still haven't signed the NPT. Nobody worries about that rogue nuclear state in the West. Possibly because our politicians constantly bribe them, and that's really what our foreign aid represents. What we need to do is get a two-state solution going, or some sort of one-state solution, or we march in, we guarantee. It doesn't really matter what form it takes. Something has to be done. It's an international embarrassment, and primarily it's an embarrassment for the United States. It's not helping the Israeli or Palestinian citizens. They're not being helped. The average Israeli citizen it isn't living in some gold-gilded mansion. They're still living in, you know, what amounts to halfway developed but ultimately commie block-style homes. The average Palestinian is dirt poor. And both of these sides are pitted against one another by their politicians and by these various other entities, these international groups and bureaus and firms within the region. And really, nobody's life is better because of that. No Jew's life is better because the Israeli government hauls off and starts bombing Gaza or intervening in the West Bank. The average Palestinian, their life doesn't improve because Hamas decides to fire off a few bottle rockets. It just doesn't. It's just perpetual warmongering for decades at a time. Don't you think it's time we at least try to solve the problem? Look, if Trump, the deal maker in chief, is capable of even getting the groundwork laid, it'll be more than any other president has actually done. It would be quite a step forward. I think he can go further than that. I think he has the unique skill set and the unique international entanglements to actually get this problem solved. And if he does, it'll be legendary. It would be a shining success. It would put him up a couple points in my estimation. I still rate him as a 5 or a 6 out of 10. A decent president. Not Orange Hitler, but not a god man either at the same time. But he'd be near great. He'd be like at JFK levels of popularity if he can get a two-state solution going. That's short of the wall for his core fans. I think that's probably the greatest thing he could accomplish. So hopefully he will. When one of his staffers says, "Ooh, West Bank and the Western Wall is part of Palestine, so Netanyahu can..." Technically, yeah, it's technically true. I think it was the way that it was said. It sounded like it was angry or patronizing or something like that. And so it rankled people in the Israeli press. They're like, well, we don't like this sort of language. It sounds kind of like Nazi stuff or something. And you know how sensitive they are about Nazi stuff, of course. So then Trump gets to come and smooth things over. He gets to do his smooth Trump thing. Oh, let me shake your hand, Ben. I'm your best friend. Don't worry, we're going to get a deal going. Something like that. It's going to be funny. He's probably playing them like a fiddle, using somebody who, you know, maybe somebody was going to resign. He says, okay, but you do this last thing for me. There's like 50 grand in it for you. Okay, just when the Israelis call you up, take the call and tell them that the Western Wall is part of Palestine and be kind of rude and then hang up on them. Just trust me on this one. I'll fire you the next day. Here's an advance payment just to make sure you fucking do your job. Just do that, okay? Trust me, it's gonna be huge. It's gonna be extravagant and magnificent. Everything's gonna be great. Something like that. That's kind of Trump's MO. It'd be funny if that were true. That's about all. Peace out.